welcome to the Serpent Temple podcast. We are here with me, Floyd, and Nathanael from Damim.
Hello.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners, viewers.
You already did that, didn't you?
As in, like, what you do.
No.
Thanks, Shem. Oh, great producer.
So my name is Nathanael. I play guitar, and I suppose sing is a bit of a misnomer, or at least most of the time. I do vocals in Damim, and I'm very happy to be here.
I'm glad you're happy to be here. We're also happy to be here.
No, thank you very much for coming in, despite all the trials and tribulations of today. Notting Hill Carnival, train strikes and all that.
Knife crime people.
So, before we start, I'm going to present you with latest
presentations.
couple of issues.
Oh,
wow.
Oh my god, I've actually been really looking forward to issue 2.
We've already bought the first one.
Yeah.
But do you have the special guest cover?
Oh, I didn't know there's different covers.
Look at these, they're gorgeous.
Oh, I love it. No, we don't. Oh, we have. Oh, that's cool.
This is so cool. I loved the first issue. We were going to talk about this anyway. I really loved how you included a lot of like people that you would recognize from the metal scene.
Yeah, I mean that was. It's an opportunity to do that sort of thing. So, our vision or our take on it was why would you miss out on that? And it's, I suppose, the same thing with just using that as a creative medium rather than it being a side activity or a kind of a side hustle for the band, which I suppose it is. In some ways it's quite viable, in ways that music maybe isn't these days. But rather than it being something on the side, we really treat it as a thing in itself. And it's also, surprisingly, or maybe not, very much like being in a band. You have the creative tension, the disagreements, the existential, doubts, the soul searching, and the sort of the triumphant thing at the end where you actually have something tangible. So, and I do think that we've taken things to another level of proficiency and storytelling and the richness of the graphics. Literally every single aspect that we could have enhanced has been taken to another level with this. And I realise I'm heavily biased, but it's. I would encourage you to make your own minds up. And both of these actually have guest covers by. This is Ian Richardson, who did a guest cover for the first issue, who's a Judge Dredd and 2000 AD artist.
Whoa!
And that's done by Kev Crossley, who is also Judge Dredd cover artist, and he does other things. So, and on the cover. Also, there's a fair amount of stuff that that's taken from our actual lives that makes it into the comics. So, for example, this is the main antagonist of issue 2. She's called the Grave Dancer, and she's based on Flo's wife.
Oh,
No
Zoe!
way! Oh,
No way!
So yes, I mean, it's. She's become her own character. It's a little bit more removed. But there are a few details, like she's trying to lip read what we're saying from across the bar in one of the pages. And actually and I did not know this when we were writing this, she is able to lip read. And I don't know if she signs as well. But or here, for example, we need to knock out Faust to take him on the tube because he's too claustrophobic. And
That's relatable.
He does not take the tube in real life because he is too claustrophobic.
I love
So
Faust.
there's all sorts of little actual details from what how we manifest as people that are incorporated into this these comics.
I love how you've got the World's End in there. Stuff that anyone who basically is local to London will recognise instantly, but also if you're not, that's really cool to get that insight.
I love the colour palette. It reminds me a bit of, do you ever read Transmetropolitan?
Oh,
No.
yeah.
No.
It's amazing. So good.
In terms of the venues and again the details, Alan, the artist, is really insistent on recreating things as accurately as possible, at least in some respects. Like he took a bit of creative license when recreating the inside of the Black Heart, which looks like more like the Forum.
I wish it looked like that.
No, that's the. I'm not going to spoil it. But it's not the Black Heart.
Okay, I wish it was.
But yes, here we are through the interdimensional colon.
Oh, that's so cool.
Oh, dun dun dun! I love this. Is very Red Dwarf. This bit here. It reminds me of you know the episode I mean, where they it cuts in half and like there's the mirror versions of Kachansky and.
Is it the one where they connect with the alternate reality?
Yeah.
Yes, I know the episode.
Yeah. This is obviously better in quality and consistency and tone, but I love that episode.
Careful now.
No insulting Red Dwarf on the pod.
I do like the fact that when you watch certain episodes of Red Dwarf, I'm thinking one of the emo hawk ones, and they're going through the tunnels, and the camera has a sort of high angles. You can see the lights at the top of the studio and some of the scaffolding. So that's one of the reasons one of the things that makes Red Dwarf even better, in my opinion.
Funny, I think Red Dwarf was my first exposure to Carcass as well. Before I knew they were a band.
The song, the Smakeheads.
Smakeheads, yeah. Smeg in the heads.
Smeg in the heads. Oh, that was so funny. Yeah. Well, shall we do a Psycard reading? You up for it?
I'm not really a tarot card kind of guy.
It's not tarot, so don't worry about it. It's not woo-woo. There's no spirits involved. It's literally all based on the Jungian archetypes, so it's actually a psychotherapeutic approach.
Okay.
And there is a book with like descriptions of what the archetypes mean. So basically, Jung's patients would always come to him with like the same symbols and archetypes within their dreams, even if they had no knowledge of like mythology.
So
or
it's
things like that.
sort of Rorschach test,
similar
but with cards.
Yeah, basically it's more about like self-exploration as opposed to being like you will meet a tall, dark, handsome stranger and give all of your money to a
He's going to ask you to donate to Knife Crime.
He was not. They were not tall. They were not tall.
It was so literally like he texted me to basically like to come in. He went to get painkillers and he like sent me a text to be like, I need to come through the door. He wasn't even by the door, and by the time I'd come downstairs, which was less than a minute, he was giving money to these people who were harassing him. I respect that, man. They must have been so good.
Well, you have to respect the hustle.
Yeah, the hustle was respected today. Yeah, I'm impressed. I need to learn from those guys how to close the sale. But yeah, let's do a little mini one if you're up for it.
You should get them to sell the comic.
Honestly, they'd be good. Make a
There
killing.
needs to be something in it for them as well. So need to figure out some sort of structure.
Some kind of incentive. So we'll start with 5 cards, or maybe 3. We'll do past, present, future, and then goals and motivations.
So is there plans to stock these anywhere, or?
Well, right now, what we do is attend a number of Comic-Con style events.
Yeah.
And what's great about those is that you have thousands of people who actually want to discover new things, and so you have the opportunity to sell to them and to talk to them as appreciators of the enthusiastic creator, or the creations at least. And what's good about those is it's a lot more transactional than maybe live events as a band. So once you're in there, because you have to find your way into the network, you book a table, you stock the table, you attend it, you sell it, it pays for itself, and you repeat. And I suppose the other thing is we do sell it online, and we will sell it at shows, and at shows we tend to be the only band that has that sort of item, for lack of a better way of putting it. And yeah, so people tend to take quite well to that at shows as well, especially because the quality is, again, I'm very biased, but I like to think it's self-evident that it's a real quality product with, well crafted story, graphics, printed on nice paper. The other thing in the US during San Diego is very interesting to see the other comic creators, and some of them had quite good prints, but others, the standard US comic paper quality is just disconcertingly flimsy, and it's this sort of floppy thing that's a fraction of the size of our, respectably European A4 size prints.
It's like pulp.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is not. I like to think that this is a bit more of an event when you open it up, and the vibrant colours just assault your senses in a
Colours
sense.
are gorgeous.
So,
And the paper is so thick, I thought I was turning 2 pages.
right.
So it is really high quality stuff. It's good.
No, that's just really well laid it out. It kind of reminds me of the sort of comics you'd see. Do you remember Orbital Comics used to be around the corner?
Yeah, I missed that
The great little
place.
independent comic book. I've never been a big comic guy myself, but
I used
my
to get
partner
heavy
used to
metal there.
collect the Sonic the Hedgehog
Oh,
comics.
bless! That's so
It's just-
cute.
It's just diabolical.
I'd always go in there for heavy metal because it was the only place that would get new issues. Yeah. The comic heavy metal.
Yes.
Sorry.
But if you mentioned Judge Dredd, just a quick aside, my dad went to school with Alan Grant.
No way.
I think one of the Judge Dredd authors, yeah.
That's cool.
Very
I don't know if
nice.
he's still alive or not, but...
Speaking of school, shall we
That's-
start with the past? You want? I would usually do past, present, future.
Fine.
Motivation would usually be at the bottom, and then we'd have
You
your.
said motivation and then you put it to the top.
No, that's the bottom for the camera.
Oh,
That's
okay.
all, that's why this is
Right.
past, present, future,
Yeah.
motivation, goals.
Got it.
Yeah. Past. The body. Okay.
Interesting band.
Yeah.
You can never keep up with their releases. Every time I look at
Truly a body
Encyclopedia
of work.
Metallic, they've got another 5 albums.
I'll read you the card. A body stripped of the outer layer showing the muscles and veins on a squared background of enlarged veins, all in shades of red and blue. This card initially stands for our physical makeup, indicating health and bodily well-being or lack of it. It also implies rhythms of our body which govern our health and happiness together with the meridians.
Right.
Well, you're a singer, so your body's very important because it's essentially your instrument.
To some degree, yes. I mean, in some sense, the body is your instrument to manifest into the world, and your instrument in terms of what the art of living is and how you project it. So I guess I'm vaguely agreeing with you beyond the scope of what you presented.
The art of living, that's a really interesting way of describing it. That's a very philosophical approach to living.
I mean, I think everyone's an artist, just not everyone's a good artist.
Oh, I like that. That's interesting. Maybe some people aren't even aware that they're artists.
I would agree. I actually, a good friend of mine he's very binary in his thinking, and we had a disagreement about whether food was art or not.
Oh, food is art.
Exactly.
Food is definitely
Right.
art. You can elicit
Yes.
such the strongest emotions of all the arts with food. Food can make you cry. It can make you weep with happiness.
I'll tell you what, the cheeseburgers of Bloodstock made me cry.
Yeah.
Thanks for that contribution.
I wasn't graced with that experience. So.
I've been told that you're quite the chef as well.
I like to. I love to cook. I love. It's another way of creating things, items, experiences that can. Firstly, it's a connection with yourself, but it's also a connection with other people, and I'm always extremely grateful for having the wherewithal to actually create the food that I'm able to create, and especially if you're not feeling particularly well for whatever reason, you've had a bad day or something, and you make yourself some amazing food, and you're like, actually, I can still do this, and it, because of what it is, it makes you feel better as well. So it's an extremely important skill. I don't understand why people who don't appreciate how important it is. But anyway, I expect that, so as I was saying, I tend to come up with my own variants on existing recipes, etc. And it's not a contrived process. I mean, I suppose, how would it be? But you just try things out. And it's a lot like music. You trust your taste in the most literal sense here. And you rely on your ability to make good judgment, and you trust the process, and you end up with things like a lasagna that's made with aubergines instead of meat, or not that I'm vegetarian, but or like my own sort of take on a Spanish omelette, or whatever. If you're going to put me on the spot without preparation, I'm not going to be able to think about most of the things.
Okay.
But yeah.
So, where did you get the interest in food from? Is that something you inherited, or is
Being
it
hungry?
Being hungry. The original source.
And needing to cook. Essentially, that's the main one, really. And I lived in a flat where I would already cook, but it was a flat share, and the other flatmates would cook, and there was a Mexican guy and a Basque Spanish guy, and then there was an Italian guy, and you sort of pick up different tricks and techniques and develop your own variant on the kind of the quote unquote original. So, and then of course there's recipe books and on the infinite online library. So combine all of that, and you have, I suppose, my cobbled together version of whatever it is that I'm making at the time. And also a necessity. I mean, if you think about cooking as well, it's heavily, it's basically a kind of chemistry guided by taste and preference for texture. So, for example, to make a sauce, there's a few basic ways of making it, and it's almost always a form of emulsion, right? And essentially what's an emulsion? It's different immiscible liquids or substances that are brought together by some emulsifying agent. So you can have a salad dressing where you have oil and some sort of sour base, so that can either be, and you'll take the original recipe and you'll swap out the ingredients depending on what you have. Or same thing with the kind of the French sauce type, where you'll start with a base and then you'll add egg, which you incompletely cook as you add fat, and that thickens the mixture by the partial cooking of the egg proteins and that sort of thing. And once you bear these things in mind, you can swap things around, again, depending on what you have or your preference. So, for example, in a salad dressing, you might use toasted sesame oil instead of, olive oil or whatever, for example. So, yes.
Beautiful.
It's fascinating. I don't think I've ever, whenever I've made sauce, I've been very lazy. I just sort of add it and then build it up in the actual main thing, as opposed to make it separately. But I am trying to get more into that side of things. I tried to make cacio e pepe last week, and that was...
I'm not aware of it.
Oh, it's just some Italian. It's
Cacio
like the
e
most
pepe.
basic ass Italian pasta you could make.
Okay.
But it was okay.
That was great.
Curries have been good recently.
Thank you.
No.
Yeah, curry's alright.
Cook a good curry.
I cook an okay curry. Should we move on to the present?
Okay.
The wheel. Interesting. So 26 is looking like a little torture style. The body and the wheel. Let me read this. So, a water wheel turns in the stream, driving the unseen mill above it, with a strong brick wall shown, whilst golden fish swim among the reeds. This card represents the principle of things endlessly changing, yet forever staying the same. It stands for constancy and persistence.
I'm fairly persistent. I think if you know anything about the musical project that I'm involved in, you'll know that it requires quite a bit of persistence to still be doing this, either persistence or foolishness, whichever way you choose to see it. But yeah, so I mean, all of these so far are kind of universally applicable. You can kind of shape the conceptual wrapping around pretty much any other paradigm that you bring forth into the conversation.
Absolutely.
So I suppose that's the point.
Yeah. You described the podcast. That's so beautiful. It's so meta. We actually did come full circle.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. It's
Like
the wheel.
What was the kind of nexus for the name change initially? Was it just
Let's see. There were two dimensions to that. One of them was the fact that it was essentially a new lineup, kind of new vibe. Although the difference engine, I absolutely, in particular, I stand by, and I do think it's a record that doesn't sound. It's not the sound of 2007.
no?
Right.
Can I just say, I love that record so much.
I'm
so
a
good.
big fan.
I love it. It's wicked. I still headbang like a motherfucker when Mirror Ridge Ritual comes on. It's so good.
Well, so we came up with that, and then there was a sort of a period which was difficult with lineups, and then I met Flo, and then we kind of built the next album as we went along, and we completed the lineup, and it was such a different lineup that it was almost a new manifestation of the project, and we didn't want to start completely from scratch, and it felt right to give it a new identity. But then the other aspect of that is the fact that any combination of 3 alphanumeric characters, right, is just a terrible idea if you're going to name something, unless you have really big bucks behind you that can absolutely establish that as a brand identity. And as it happened, it's a fairly widely used word, and there were about in metal alone there were at least 6 bands that
Really?
had that name. So
Really?
oh yeah. Look up Metal Archives, you'll see there's like I can't remember the details, but it's something along the lines of a Brazilian melodic death metal band, an Ecuadorian Christian death metal band. It's just it wasn't worth it, and also it's just not Google friendly, right? So it was time to move on, and it kind of kept the identity of the previous brand, I suppose. The logo's same typography, that sort of stuff, and it's the same first 3 letters. So that's the wheel.
The wheel. Staying the same. The future. Union is pretty on brand. Pretty much what you described. But let's read it anyway. So, a cup stands at the confluence of 2 streams. This cup stands for a coming together, a wedding or an alliance. The cup is a symbol of celebration and relationships. It's a strong card for a promise of joy and the prospects of a great river deriving from the union. It can also stand for the merging of 2 up to now separate parts of the personality.
I mean, if you're going to expect me to come up with a kind of
There's no
off the cuff,
expectations, don't worry.
I could just say yes,
Yes.
and we could move on.
If you want to. I mean, the union, it's very easy to relate that just to the dynamics of being in a band. Like, it is a very complex and very intense relationship that you have to maintain
Right.
for a long period of time. And, with the body and the wheel, all those things go under you're under a lot of pressure a lot of the time in a lot of very unusual situations that you repeat on a regular basis throughout the year for your album cycles and things like that. And you have played some really great shows recently as well. So
This is true. I don't think we've played any terrible shows either, which is nice.
good.
Or at least not recently. And we are in the process of recording another album. Even though we don't proclaim it loudly, and say things like, we're really happy with the way it sounds. If you weren't happy to bands that say that, if you weren't happy with the way it sounded, why would you be recording it in the first place, right? Putting that out is like saying, we love the smell of our own farts.
Yeah.
Some people do.
Yeah, some people do.
Yeah.
But yes. Anyway, we're this touches on another thing, which is if you make music and you're not only a fan, but one of your music's biggest fans. If that music that you're making is not some of your favourite music, you are wasting your time.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Stop it.
Or get better at it.
Yes.
Get better at it, and trust your taste when it tells you, well, this bit isn't that good, and it needs to be improved. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but we're very happy with the way it sounds.
Good.
And it's coming along quite nicely, and we have again secured the services of a certain mixing engineer, so it's going to sound, at least we know that it's going to be in good hands in those terms, and things are moving forward quite a pace, so that's good. We have a few shows also coming up, so I suppose that's a tangential touching on the vague, sort of square peg through a round hole.
The archetypal vagueness of the card.
That's the one.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you quickly was, I read the Transcendent Obscurity interview you did, and you cited, I think it was a while back as well, in 2015, you cited Burnt by the Sun as an influence.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a band that doesn't get nowhere near as much love.
Absolutely. Is it Dave Witt, the drummer?
Dave Witt, the drummer, yeah.
Absolute legend, yeah. And I think when I was working at Terrorizer, when he was between bands, I think we had an email exchange, and he just seemed like a really like the guy you'd want him to be, like someone who's just really into what he's doing, and I think it's probably some of his best work is with that band.
Yeah, so I think when I found out he was Municipal Waste's drummer, I was like, that's like AC/DC hiring Neil Peart as a drummer. It's like, because this man's so good at the drums.
So good.
Yeah.
Human Remains.
Yeah. No, yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention, because I was just like, just not a band that's ever in much discussions.
And it's possibly one of the only bands that would be described as some sort of metalcore that I would actually have an inclination for. Yeah.
It was like metalcore in the purest sense, right? It was like metal and hardcore as opposed to just like, the chorus verse.
It's mostly, I think, the kind of the jaggedness off the beaten pathness of the riffage and that style of vocals with no reverb. It's not about atmosphere, it's about like
I think Mike is absolutely just a beast, isn't he? Just
but the end result is really good and really compelling, and actually surprisingly atmospheric for a band that could be described as a genre with the word core in it.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to the next card?
Which one is it?
Let's go to this one. Your motivating force. The Fool. Okay. This will be a tough one. No, I'm joking. It's fine. Every single person, no matter how much we shuffle this deck, always gets the Fool.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it always comes up, right?
Yeah, every single time. It's so, honestly, it's a little bit spooky if you believe, but we don't. An aged. Wait, no, that's the Sage. I read the wrong one.
It's the Fool or the Liar?
We don't get the Liar as much. The Liar is the same as the Fool, I think, though. In the tarot, it's the same.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the same symbol. So piping merrily along. Oh no, wait, the Liar is in this. I'm wrong. Anyway, piping merrily along the cliff top away from his house, perched perilously on the edge, the Fool dances along, skipping over the roots of the tree. This character can stand for folly and stupidity of the sorts that bring so many ventures to ruin, in oneself and in other people. It can also symbolize the holy fool, the person who can tell us truths of a sort which a wise man cannot. There can also be the sense of someone playing their own tune through life.
Well, when I see something like this, I think of the jester rather than the foolish
The
person.
idiot, yeah.
Yeah, the village idiot, the cretin.
Indeed.
No. So my first thought was the jester, which, because of the
position
the
they
humorous way that they, or the kind of the playful manner in which they deliver what they do, they can incorporate certain subjacent truths. I'm not sure if that's a word, but like underlying truths which are either not immediately apparent or a sort of Emperor's New Clothes kind of scenario where...
Like a court jester.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, that's the way that I think about it. And in a way, I think all art is... all good art. Yeah, good artists, bad artists. In a way, all art is that has a some of that in it, in terms of delivering things that, you know, aren't necessarily apparent. But at the same time, I think it's arrogant to, you know, going into the process of making the art to think that, yes, it's going to have this worthwhile, you know, paradigm shifting thing that's going to change social attitudes. Like, you have no idea what effect your art is or isn't going to have. So just, you know, it's a kind of extension of yourself into the world. Just do it, trust the process, and let it happen. And sometimes you have certain truths that come out, like the lyrics, for example, our lyrics. I don't think there's anybody who's written any other than myself, but I tend to find that because of the way that the process, I don't necessarily always completely understand all of the kind of implications and meanderings, but I will tend to understand them after the fact, after the kind of the catharsis of putting it out there. And I'll look back and I'll go, oh, that's what it was about. Oh, well, that was quite prescient. You know, without, again, heavily biased, but yes, so that's almost a way that your subconscious is allowed to be the fool through your art, I suppose. So that's how we're going to wrap that particular conceptual thing around.
That little bell on it.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's really interesting because the fools playing their own tune through life, and you as a musician, obviously, to do what you do, to get up and be like, I'm going to do a band, it's going to be about this is the truth I'm going to convey. You've decided to do that. Most people wouldn't do that, so you are playing your own tune through life, and there is inherent risk. Your house is literally perched on the edge of a cliff top when you're making financial investments, let's say, into going and playing shows in different countries and releasing albums, but that is
doing Comic-Con in the US.
Doing a Comic-Con in the US, but it's worth it. It doesn't really matter, and I think the way society views artists is as foolish. However, we do have a sense of power over the fact that people will still listen and hang on to every word if they like your music.
True. I mean, you don't go, well, especially, I suppose, I wouldn't have gone into, because it wasn't, it's difficult to imagine how, if you weren't there, how our style of quote-unquote extreme music was just not something that was widespread. It was just bizarre to have people shouting on records, right? And I wouldn't have gone into that if I was choosing a genre to be quote-unquote popular or to please people, right? It's always been about, well, this connects with me, I want to put out something that also connects with other people. And when you do get people coming up to you to say, your music, you know, helped me through this extremely difficult period of my life, and I really like the lyrics on this because it's this, and I can relate to that. That's the sort of connection that makes it really worthwhile. Okay, so I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but yeah, let's move on.
There is no destination.
Oh.
The Stranger.
Which one is this?
We'll find out.
No, which...
Motivation.
This is, so that was your motivating force. So
Mhm.
what gets you up in the morning, and this is your goal. So what makes you...
I'm a fool to get up in the morning.
The Stranger is waiting for you. Stranger danger. Okay.
Stranger in the knife crime, guys.
Oh my god. Okay. In the shadow, making an entrance in a doorway, stands a character whose sex is ambivalent. The Stranger perhaps symbolises that part of our nature that we've shut out, that is now entering in a surprising way. It is the equivalent to the anima or animus, the excluded part of our psyche that is the opposite sex to our own. It can also stand for any person we have underrated or neglected, who could prove themselves a force in our lives. Represented here is also the caution and apprehension that we feel towards new people in our lives initially.
No, the Stranger is the person that you're going to be in the future, clearly,
That's interesting.
because you don't know what experiences what is a kind of living being, if not an ever shifting form. It's the form that's more important than the kind of the atoms that constitutes it, etc. This is a fairly well-treaded path conceptually, so I'm not going to pretend that I've invented it or anything like that. But if I can't remember the quote exactly, but the past is is another country. They do things differently there, which is an opening line from. So in reverse, like the future is another country. They will be doing things differently there, and it's populated by all these strange people, including the future version of yourself. So, yeah, I'd say that. I wouldn't say that there will still be a connection. There will still be a whole number of things in common. But yeah, that's what I saw when I saw that.
That's very interesting, because a lot of people will take that card much more literally.
Okay.
And they'll talk, for example, about people at shows that talk to them, or perhaps like their relationship with femininity, like or masculinity, depending on who they are, or non-binary stuff. But it's interesting that you took that to be the future, to be the idea that we are. There's also like the more Eastern ideas of like there not being really an identity, a fixed identity, that we're constantly new and different, and you only really think of yourself when you think of yourself in that moment, and then at all other times you're not really anything.
I think that's parallel to what I was
For sure.
putting across.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. I got nothing.
You got nothing.
Nothing to add
You
to
got
that.
nothing.
Really well put and succinct.
But I am interested. It does talk about what we're shutting out. So do you think perhaps there is a part of what you do in the music that you can express what you normally? I mean, that's.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And another thing is, I don't like to explain my lyrics, because there is no better way to put the concepts that are being put across than the specific arrangement of words that that expresses that. Yes. So in the same way as you might have certain number of things that are layered and then cut up, and then by rearranging the words or the segments of sentences in a certain way, you bring out something else, something new that wouldn't be expressed otherwise. I'm at least talking about my good lyrics. There are some less good lyrics as well, but when it's on, there's this kind of real poetic magic to lyrics that work, which brings me to a completely different topic, which is I really cannot stand lyric videos. Okay, even if you're working with
Preach!
even if you're working with excellent lyrics, if you have them one word at a time, appearing on a screen, they would sound.
It's so cringe. I hate it.
Awful.
It reminds me of those
Absolutely
Disney
cannot
music
stand
videos
it.
with the little like ears that would go hop over onto each
Yes!
other.
Yes! It's exactly like that.
Yeah, it's like, you can't read, let's help.
Yeah. You're fucking stupid.
I was thinking more karaoke, but
Good
yeah,
for that.
I've seen some passable lyric videos, and in an era where everyone is searching desperately for content, right? Then just being able to videoify something that you could present it on a certain visual platform, I see the appeal. But and that tells you that you're listening to something with lyrics when you have it on silent. I get it. It's still dreadful, and I still don't want to do it. So anyway.
I'm now imagining a dying god coming into human flesh, and it's got like Tom Warrior like this, and it's just got the little lyrics coming into human
amazing.
flesh. I think that would be quite a non-elevation of that incredible piece of art.
That's like the new Spinal Tap, isn't it? It's like Tom Giamore is at the record label, and they're like, Tom, you've got to do it. He's like, I don't want to do it.
Don't make me do this.
There's an Infant Annihilator one that's just absolutely brutal. It's just the worst video ever.
Well, there's the quality of music videos itself, which is different. But I'd rather watch a terrible music video than a lyric video, than the best lyric video, personally.
I feel patronised by them in the worst way.
Well, I would say, arguably,
I feel let down. Sorry, I feel let down by our cousins in the genre who put this out. You know what I mean? It's this is why people think that of us. This is why people
because
think
of
we're
them.
idiots.
They
It is
did
because
this.
of them. It does get my goat. Anyway.
it's funny because I would say, like, obviously complete different genre, but like when Freak on a Leash came out by Korn, that got a lot of people into Korn, I think, based on how kind of innovative that music video was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, imagine if that had like
Is that
the
the one
weird
with the
sounds
bullet?
he makes.
Yeah, the one with the bullet, yeah.
That was an amazing video.
If you're a teenager and you saw that, you'd be like...
No, I couldn't agree.
I understand, but the especially the appeal and the gateway band, but Korn are like, and Korn especially, because there are a lot of, I'd say, new metal adjacent bands, or bands that happen to be making music around that time that got lumped into new metal that weren't actually had nothing to do with new metal, such as Deftones.
Definitely, 100%. Yeah.
But Korn is like eating McDonald's. Right? You feel like you're eating something, it tastes good, it's got a catchy chorus, but at the end of it, you know you've harmed yourself.
That's an incredible description.
And it's I think the damage to aesthetic quality that has been done by new metal is incalculable.
Amen!
That time around the late 90s, early 2000s, where new metal was the only kind of heavy music that was being pushed by the big media, that was the alternative to the 4 to the floor, like 4-bar loop shit house that was, and the garage and all that stuff, or there was Jamiroquai as well, but like that was the only like alternative thing that people would go into, and it was a nadir for music and for art in general. It was just, and the way that people are trying to bring it back is as contrived as the video moves on a Korn video.
Yeah.
You know, it's not natural. It's not good.
I've been so excited for this episode.
And people are going to start playing fucking System of a Down again.
Whoa! No.
the lighthouse of a genre which I think should be called silly metal. Right?
I love System of a Down is like the one new metal band that I love.
The stupid little singing.
Yes. Yes.
Fuck off.
Oh come on! You do
Can't
that
stand
every
it.
single day, 24.
Not a record.
You would.
No.
But that's an interesting point though, because like the way it's come back and had its like revival, it would lead you to think that it was always so revered and loved.
Yeah.
It's
Like, I
just the
remember-
midlife crises of our generation.
Yeah,
Like you
That's
wouldn't
literally
dare
what it
say
is.
you liked new metal band back in the
It's
days.
true. I think we're all trying to return to the comforts of our teenage years. That's why Pokemon is like so big still.
And so, well, it's a shame because you had all those, that classic era in the beginning of the 90s. You had your Suffocation and your Gold Guts and all those albums coming out, and they're just immediately followed by new metal. So
Garbage. Fucking garbage.
I wouldn't say
so?
it was immediately followed. There was Faith No More and there was Roots.
yeah.
But those two combined turned into this. It's like when you combine, I don't know, chocolate and
Piss.
vinegar or something. You
It's
know,
like
which
Australian chocolate.
I would say
Or
American.
American.
I don't-
It's
I
the
don't know.
same deal. It's
Yeah.
got the same thing
Yes,
in vomit,
the
in it. Yeah.
the chemical to keep the milk. Yeah. So it's two separate ingredients. Well, I mean, Roots was controversial anyway, but Faith No More stands on its own, especially in my opinion, King for a Day, exceptional album. But those vocals, I think, Mike Patton took responsibility for his part in the creation of new metal, and I respect him for owning up and taking responsibility and apologising. But the damage is done.
The platonic realm has been harmed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, hopefully, I mean, then again, can it get much worse at somewhere like Download, right, where you've got the legacy acts, and then you've got things like Wargasm UK. I mean, what's that about? Come on, guys. Like,
He's the guy in that band's the son
of
bass player
Sex Pistols. Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to mention it because maybe there is some part of some organic growth somewhere that led to them, but yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it.
we actually, when they played at Bloodstock a few years ago, we told somebody we were camping with that they were actually like a blackened death metal band, like a behemoth name sort of deal, and they went there, and their face as they were watching it was just completely just a sight to behold.
So yes, the lineups of Download have not moved me to feel that I was missing out as of recent years. Apart from the legacy acts, which you can't argue with. I mean, you probably can, but they probably would ignore you, and they're too loud anyway. But they're always great live, and when I say always, I did see them with Blaze Bayley. So that's dating things a bit, but they were exceptionally good then already, and so I'm trying to end on a positive note rather than just throw shade, as they say.
Oh, we love the shade. We brought you here for this.
There's so much shade.
I know. It's wonderful.
Can I say one thing?
Go on.
You can say
You said
other
more than one
things.
thing.
I've said a lot of things. I'm sorry for ruining
Kind of
it,
your
but
podcast, so you
That's the Shab Lucas
I'm
show.
sorry. I'm such a big Nathanael fan. The Damim song, Descendant of
Amalek.
Amalek.
Yes.
Nina was telling me a bit about it,
Mm-hmm.
about kind of what that is.
Yes.
But that's kind of related to being a fool or foolishness or.
So,
How do you view it? Or am I misremembering?
I think you might be.
The name came completely after the lyrics, so I think there's a lot of power in the naming of a song, and you can actually bring it's almost like the super lyric that can bring out a whole new meaning to everything, and actually with a lot of the songs, especially more recently. Not all of them, but there's often at least two or three different perspectives which are sometimes completely opposed. You can read the lyrics, seeing them from that paradigm, it can be either an endorsement or a complete rejection of something or other, or it can be from one. And the song title has the power to do that, to impart that
The
duality,
direction.
or the direction, or the multiple directions, or it's a sort of springboard from where you ask you interrogate the meaning of the rest of the lyrics, right? So the song titles will almost always come afterwards and don't necessarily have anything to do with the content of the lyrics in themselves. So I guess I don't know if that comprehensively.
You didn't
answered.
write it from the bottom up.
Yes.
To be about that.
Yes, exactly.
But it's interesting that you did choose Amalek, and obviously you have the Hebrew meaning behind the name as well.
Yes, so it's a sort of, I guess, a kind of an embodiment of the evil of somebody who picks of a sort of bully, shall we say?
Yeah.
Right, and somebody who picks on the weak and the old, etc. But it's difficult to explain that without verging into going into the kind of explaining the lyrics. I'm trying to toe that line, shall we say?
We won't force you.
But yeah, I think that's probably as far as I can go.
Fair enough. No, I think I've always found Amalek an interesting figure, but it's been many years since I thought about it, let's say. But yeah, it was like one of the OG genociders, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Real bad guy. Fuck Amalek. So it's cool to see him pop up in that context.
Yeah, it's I think it's something that, again, not that many others have brought up, and actually it reminds me of, I think, a post I saw recently along the lines of, if your lyrics don't talk about, murder, violence, gnarly things, you're not playing death metal, you're playing life metal.
Oh my god. Okay. That's all we're allowed to write about now.
And the thing is, the person who writes these things goes from the starting point that the people actually making the art care about what genre they are.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's...
So, let's go home and write some life metal songs, guys.
It is pretty... Looking through the lyrics of A Fine Game of Nil, after everything was compiled, I was quite surprised how much of a downer they were. Right? There's some pretty dark stuff. There's stuff about, bereavement. There's definitely, death, totalitarianism, kind of some really pessimistic stuff, which is why it's important to have the
Counterbalance?
Yes, exactly. At least a kind of, it's like food. You can bring together these nice flavors, but if you don't have something to highlight them, you get something quite bland, right? So it's the same sort of thing here. And actually, the title, A Fine Game of Nil, is an anagram for a meaning of life.
Shit!
Nice.
So again, and that can be something positive, or it can be seen as, well, actually, the meaning of life is, nihilism, which that's not where I'm coming from, but you could interpret it that way. So yes, again, was it a question wrapped in an enigma, in a mystery, or something? That's
It's like a pastry of meaning.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah. Like all art, food is the most transient, I think, and that's why I appreciate it probably the most, because you do it every day. But I think some food also is not art. Depends.
Oh, yes. Well,
The McDonald's of.
Greg's pasty.
New metal food.
well, no, I would say that McDonald's is art.
Oh.
In the it's bad art.
It's like mass-produced art.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's lots of this is mass-produced art. This is mass-produced art. I mean,
This is less mass-produced than this.
Sure, I'm not comparing that to McDonald's.
You
okay?
can if you want to. I
But,
won't take it personally.
But like a label on a this design,
the soup can.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, the soup can. It's. I think it's that kind of thing. It's still somebody put thought into it, and it's about crafting an experience in a certain way. It so happens it's a terrible experience, but there's something that's enjoyable about it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as popular as it is.
What do you think of Alain de Botton when he describes art as being advertising for the most important ideas in the world?
That's hella pretentious.
I love that.
In a way, that sort of thing robs it of its freedom to just be.
To just be.
And just be in something
Yeah,
you
okay.
enjoy. Right, sure, there are some paradigm shifts and kind of... I think there's a danger in some of the tendencies that are prevalent these days in terms of, oh, you can't express that, or you can't do that, or if a band has this in their lyrics, then they must be that. You know, if you look at some of our lyrics, there's some stuff which is, or at least if you peel away some of the layers and look at some of the stuff and think of it from a certain paradigm, you could think a certain thing, but you have to be free to explore the concept in order for the art to actually push the envelope, to actually do something that potentially is worthwhile, right? And it has to be this kind of microcosm where your unconscious and subconscious are free to just, unleash these unspeakable things, right? It's a kind of, it's not only a safety valve, it enables us to face these demons and whatnot. And if you start to police the sorts of things that can be discussed in art, then that's inherently deeply problematic, and it curtails the actual, psychological usefulness of the art itself, I think. And that's kind of quite dangerous in a way in itself, even though the intent might be good, right? This is something I'm quite adamant about.
Through my own view on that,
Mhm.
I agree with that the discussion should be unhindered, the discussion. But I do think that there are times where it ceases to be a discussion, and perhaps it's more an advertisement. Or
Oh, I
it's
see
more-
what you mean. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but how do you draw the line?
Exactly. How do you? But I think
Like,
it's an
there are some
individual thing most of the time.
there are some examples where it's very blatant, sure, but it's even then, does that mean that that art cannot exist? There's some which are a little bit more subdued about the way that they touch on controversial. I don't.
Well, like Drook?
I don't know.
You can name and shame.
I don't want to name and shame because
Okay.
I know some people who love this one band that I'm thinking of right now.
Does it begin with a B?
Hugely.
Show us on the doll.
No, I'm not going to answer it. But it's a huge band, massively influential, and I know some people who love it,
Okay, I know who you
who
mean.
would be massively upset if they realised, how. But it doesn't take away from its importance and influence and how great the art is. Right. That's and it's not an advertisement either. I would say it was.
I guess it depends on the art, because some within the genre adjacent,
Yeah.
perhaps to yours, is famous for lyrics that are literally saying
bad things.
saying some
things,
inciting things. Let's say that's what I mean by when
I see
it
what you
ceases
mean.
to be
Yeah,
a discussion.
we're sort of going on the edge of freedom of speech, but at the same time,
I guess who does it affect? Does it affect anyone? And at that point, does it need to be put?
all right.
Like what do you do with that?
Let me counter that. Like, at which point do you go, well, actually, we need to think about repressing X, Y, and Z. Like, when do you start to be Mary Whitehouse and
Yeah, I
Tipper
agree.
Gore,
Yeah, it's
right?
there's
You
no
know?
simple solution. Maybe that's not the best word to use.
But yeah,
To that problem.
In a language they can understand.
yeah.
Yes. I think this is a discussion that we do need to have with a lot of different people, because I am interested to understand what different people think about this, because it's an issue and I think it does affect people, and there does seem to be an uptick in problems and incidents that are happening at live shows and events and just in general in the community.
Here's another one. Like, when people go out and do bad things, is it because they've been playing video games where they do bad things? Is it because they've been watching
it's a symptom,
films?
not the actual issue.
Yes,
right?
I think the people themselves would have been predisposed anyway.
They would still be doing that bad stuff.
Probably, maybe there's something about it, but does that mean that piece of art should be forbidden from existing? And if you open that door, then you open the door for a whole number of other things. And I read an article recently, like, censorship doesn't have to be violence supported by violence and state endorsed, right? And that's the thing that I think is maybe being missed at the moment. It's an important factor, shall we
So
say?
perhaps the best thing is not to censor the art, but to address it.
Possibly.
Or to increase the awareness of what the art is doing, so that people realise how many calories are in the McDonald's meal they're eating.
For example, yes.
Yeah.
But again, the counter to that is, if we were to, or rather another
View.
important point, or important factor here, is if you were to catalogue all of the kind of the bad things in art, in the sort of the pantheon of art, then you'd be left with very few things, and you'd be almost taking away the foundation for a lot of art that came afterwards that wasn't inclined to bad things.
I think
The
that
bad thing, like in the Peep Show.
awareness of, say, Salvador Dali being an absolute dickhead
Yes,
doesn't necessarily take away from his art being brilliant.
exactly.
And I think that needs to be something that people can make the choice of deciding to enjoy something knowing what's behind it, perhaps. But that it also doesn't need to be as extreme as you, for example, ripping open the meanings on your lyrics. And perhaps it's more just an awareness of, say, if you listen to a certain band, maybe, knowing that the guy behind it is really into putting up really weird martial arts videos on YouTube.
There's another factor which is brought up quite often, and which, in the 90s, Cannibal Corpse were facing a backlash in Germany for their covers and lyrics and whatnot. And the point that they made was that filmmakers and actors aren't being judged by the actions of the people they're portraying, because it's a part of that representation, that transformative experience that the art embodies. So why are musicians being held to the same sort of standards? They're obviously not encouraging people to murder each other, for example.
I think that's just a lack of understanding.
There is that as well,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel that is a relevant part of the discussion as well.
I do agree. I do think it's relevant. I think that there's two sides. There's the side of, like, well, if you're going to say satirize something, it needs to be obvious you're satirizing it. But I think
No, it doesn't.
Well, that's one side of the argument. The
It
other side
doesn't.
is, does it have to be obvious? Like, I think with the kind of art that is often extreme art, there is lots of mystery and shrouding, and meaning is never intentionally obvious because it's you,
Cloaks.
the listener. You're doing the work to get to that
Corpse
point.
paint.
Yeah, it's very, you know, homoerotic and stuff. There's a lot of
Incense.
like repression and sort of like religious obsession and things like that. You know, people clearly
Pretension.
lots of pretension,
Reused
costumes,
chord sequences.
tropes.
Lyric videos.
Yes, lots of lyric videos. It's interesting. I don't think that things should be censored, but personally, I do think things should have disclaimers. I'm not saying that like you should pick up a record and it's got like a big exclamation mark.
So
like
you're a fan of the parental advisory.
I don't know. I haven't. Look, just like the personality, my views constantly shift, and I think that's a healthy thing. I'm constantly addressing and thinking, and this is why I enjoy discussing things like this. I think it's interesting to see.
But while we're on the subject of incense,
yes,
I did catch. I caught Igor recently.
Oh, I really want to see them live.
They were fantastic, absolutely phenomenal, like really brilliant projects assembled in a very uniquely French and flamboyant way.
It's very French.
You know, I caught Igor's early stuff when it was becoming a thing, and I think there were always some hit and miss aspects, but there was always a spark of brilliance, and he's really turned that into a blazing inferno, and it was absolutely fantastic. The singer, she's magnificent. The instrumentalists are all fantastic. The stage show was really well orchestrated, and if you can catch them, I would highly recommend them. However, the band that came beforehand, I did not have any preconceptions. I didn't know anything about them, just I knew quite a few people liked them. And I was introduced to them by the fact that they were burning some sort of frankincense, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go.
Wolves in the throne room?
No.
Was it Katushka?
No,
because they asked me for a lighter one show because none of them had a lighter, so I had nothing to light the incense.
And so I'm treated to this, I guess, the same sort of chord sequence and like kind of descending with alternating. Actually, it was almost always the same kind of drum beat, and then they had the quiet bit where the singer never quite hit any of the notes.
Oh.
And then it just carried on for about 45 minutes.
I need to know who this is.
I think I know.
And I sent this text to an editor friend of mine, who I've known for a long time, who's like, what is this hipster bullshit? And he's like, how dare you? Right? And I felt insulted by the experience because he was so bloody pretentious. The man was Amen-Ra.
Oh!
Shots fired!
Absolutely horrendous.
I was not expecting that. That's incredible.
Did not enjoy that experience at all. And a friend of mine who actually used to play bass for us, who is into all those adjacent bands, it surprised me. Well, it didn't surprise me because he has impeccable taste. When he was like, "Nope, I absolutely don't get it as well." You know, there's probably some tattoo parlor where this is on repetition, where people are getting their old stupid tattoos covered up in like
black work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's.
Oh my god.
And some very good friends of mine absolutely love that band, and I'm sorry, guys, I do not like it. I do not. It does not speak to me.
Oh my goodness.
It's like that video of Machine Gun Kelly.
Oh yeah.
He does the freestyle of the guys.
I don't think Nathanael's going to know that video.
I'm not aware of it, no.
Machine Gun Kelly tries to rap in front of a famous, I can't remember who the host is, but it's like an actual rapper.
Okay.
And like he's really trying to impress this guy. And then he finishes and the guy is just like, yeah, I'm not about that.
He says, I'm not feeling that,
I'm
man.
not feeling that, man.
And Machine Gun Kelly looks like he's been like shamed by his dad. It's like a really sad instance of, it's a real Partridge moment.
There's not enough honesty though in the scene. There really is. I mean, everyone's got a few bands that are big that you just don't get, right?
Oh,
It's
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh hell yeah.
To some extent, I don't like criticising other bands because, well, I'd rather say something positive, yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I did write for Terrorizer, the reviews, when I got the new issue, there were these two writers. It was James Hinchcliffe and Daniel Lukes. And if I saw their name and a low score, I would make a beeline for that review. So I would know that it was hilarious and usually insightful as well. It wasn't just panning of the thing. They were kind of quite deftly justifying what they said. So at least if there's some entertainment value to sort of panning a certain band or slaughtering one of the contemporary sacred cows, then fine. Well, I reckon with Amen-Ra, speaking of which, what must have happened is that they played at Roadburn and everyone was so stoned they didn't remember actually seeing them. And I'm they're like, oh yeah, did you see them? Oh yeah, that was really good. And that was it, their career was made.
Oh my god! It's amazing. So basically, if you want people to really like your band, you've got to get them really high when they're watching your shows.
Oh yeah, mind blown. Just like, give them some sort
incense.
of incense. Yeah.
Give them incense through that bar you'd go through. The hand would come up through up in the door. Yeah. That's all we need. Let's revive the scene, guys.
Speaking of the whole Church of Wrath, then, did you watch Ouija do the Arctangent?
No, I didn't.
No, I actually quite enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Well, it's about the same thing, yeah.
I think we were interviewing with them.
Unfortunately, no one can say their name. Everyone says it differently.
Yeah, no idea.
Yeah.
I would go for a hard G.
Yeah.
Weegadood?
Yeah.
I heard someone call them Weigadud. Or Weegadud. I don't even.
I'm not going to try.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Nathaniel. It's been
No problem.
such a pleasure to have you.
An honour to be on this podcast, and thank you for having me, and for the Jungian card reading.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
No, thank you very much for coming on. Sorry, I was disassociating a little bit there towards the end.
I'm thinking of Amen-Ra and
Yeah.
incense. Well, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this casserole of an interview.
Or to send us hate mail if you are absolute diehard fan of Amen-Ra.
We welcome it. We thrive on hate. Thank you so much for watching.